What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato. Today, I want to talk to you about the 3 most effective habits you can have for your personal development. The 3 most effective habits you can have for your personal development. So, to be able to do this, to be able to break down the idea that there are 3 most effective habits for personal development, we need to do a couple of things. One is define what personal development is. So I got my whiteboard out and wrote down some ideas and came up with what I believe personal development is. In other words, why are we striving for personal development? What's the point of doing all of this in the first place? Why are we even looking at habits? Why do we try to get better? Why do we do this? Why do we do this to ourselves? Here's what I came up with. Personal development is building the mind, body, and spirit to their fullest potential to withstand the rigors of life. Building the mind, body, and spirit to their fullest potential to withstand the rigors of life. So you'll notice that one thing that is not in that definition is to become your best self, to actualize, to do all those things, which is all important and true and something that we should be striving for. But in all of that, in actualizing, self actualizing, in becoming your best self, in striving for happiness and fulfillment, in doing all of those things is overcoming rigors. If you don't know what rigors are, of course, you can go get your Google machine out and look it up. But rigors are just the challenges of life, the things that come up that we have to overcome in order to get to the next thing, or in order to get closer to our goal, or in order to step forward. Those are the rigors of life. And in all of those things, in anything that is striving to be your best, it requires overcoming challenges. It requires overcoming obstacles. It requires overcoming things that you don't see coming and some things that you do see coming. And with all of that, when you overcome challenges, then if you do and learn correctly, then you become better. Then you build your mind, body, and spirit to their fullest potential. So I purposely left ideas like self actualization and becoming your best self and all of those great ideas, which are all great and all, feel good and everything, out, because inherent in overcoming rigors is moving to that, is moving to the best version of yourself. Another thing I want to clarify is the spirit, the mind, body, and the spirit. By spirit, what I don't mean is the religiousness of spirit, if you will. I personally am not a religious person. However, I believe that there is something else inside of us and something else that connects us to the universe that is not our mind or body per se. So there is a strengthening of our spirit within us and the connection between us and the universe that is necessary if we're going to be able to overcome the rigors of life, if we're going to be able to self actualize, if we're going to be able to beat the obstacles that we are confronted with and be able to achieve the goals that we're after. So, all of those things are necessary and important. So, like I said, that's my idea of what personal development is. I'm sure that, a lot of people would disagree. And if you look it up, I don't have any clue what the definition of personal development is, if there is a, actual definition of it. But it's probably something to that effect, something to building yourself so that you can get better, so that you can overcome obstacles. And that's what we want to do. We want to build the mind, the body, and the spirit to their fullest potential so that the rigors of life feel easier. That's the goal. Now, before we get into the 3 most effective habits that you can have for your personal development so that your mind, body, and spirit are stronger, so that they are at their fullest potential Ah, you're never at your fullest potential, so that you're constantly moving toward your fullest potential. And then that allows you to be able to overcome the rigors of life. I'll encourage you to hit pause real quick so that you can go and give us a quick review. You can review us on all of the podcasts happenings and up to a 5-star review. Remember, the more reviews we have, the more the message reach, the more people we reach, the more the message spreads. So literally by reviewing the podcast, you are helping spread the message. You are helping get the word out there so that more people can get the information that will allow them to wake up, allow them to have an epiphany where they go, oh, I can do something different. Oh, I can have an impact on the world. Oh, I can change my life if I want to. And that's what life and personal development, for that matter, is partly about. I would say the vast majority of it is about recognizing that you can have an impact on your life. You can have an impact on the outcome of your life and potentially the outcome on those people around you, depending on how big of an impact you want to have. So hit pause real quick, go give us a quick review so that we can help spread the message more. I greatly appreciate you guys doing that for us. So let's go ahead and jump into the 3 most effective habits that you can have for your personal development so that you can start to feed your mind, your body, and your spirit so that the rigors of life become easier, become easier. I'm gonna take a drink real quick. Ah, good old water. I drink a flavored I'm sorry, essential amino acids supplement during my workout. And I don't, those flavored things, I don't drink many of them. That's the only flavor thing I drink as far as I can think of. But you know how those flavored things can give you like a dry mouth kind of taste once you kind of been finished with them? That's where I am right now. At any rate, 3 most effective habits that you can have for your personal development. Remember, we're trying to we're looking for most bang for your buck is what we're looking for. Now, at the end of this, I will go over some of the things that are obviously missing because I'll go through the list and you'll go, well, damn, he missed a lot of things. And for sure, there's a bunch of things that I'm going to miss. The point is not that the other things aren't useful or helpful and potentially necessary. The question is, what are the 30 things that you can start to do if you're starting at 0 and you're having trouble and you're wanting to add things in? What are the 3 things you can add in today that are going to help you be able to build the things that we're talking about, to be able to develop yourself personally? Now, again, to be able to know that, we need to know what people struggle with. Like, why, how do we struggle? Why do we bump up against reality? Why don't we move toward our goals more effectively? Why don't we do things like that? And when you look at it, if you really break it down, and this is hard because people don't like pointing at themselves because it hurts. It hurts to look at yourself and point out all the things that are wrong with you, even though to some degree, a lot of us do that mentally anyway, but we don't do it in a productive way. We do it in a very unproductive way. For instance, you start to do something, you mess up, and you tell yourself, well, you idiot, what are you doing? Oh, you're such a dumbass. You can never do anything right. You don't say it out loud. Maybe you do. You don't say it out loud, but you think it in your head. That's terribly unproductive, not useful, and you're just reinforcing that idea. What is useful is is working through why you're getting frustrated, is working through and understanding why you're not taking the next step, why you're not able to work through the problem. That is useful. And that is what people don't like. People don't like to look at those things. The irony is, I would argue 90% of what people struggle with when it comes to the world around them and bumping up against reality and not achieving their goals is revolves around them. It revolves around their idea of themselves, their idea of what they're capable of, their idea of who they are, what they can achieve, what kind of skills they have, what kind of abilities they have, how scary the world is. It's their perception of themselves and their interaction with the world. Most people look at everything else and they're like, "Oh no, it's that thing over there. It's this, it's that person, it's, that environment, it's this circumstance." And those things are all there, but those aren't the things that are keeping you. It's your perception of them and your perception of who you are in relation to them. Your self-confidence, your self-esteem, your self-respect. Those kinds of things. Those are the things that we really, when it comes down to it, that's what we struggle with. We struggle with our ability to interact with the world. For instance, if you ask somebody one of their biggest fears, almost everybody, their top 3 biggest fears is public speaking. Standing in front of an audience, and an audience can be 5 people, it can be 50 people, it can be 500 people, but it's standing in front of an audience and speaking. Now, that plenty of people do that and they do it effectively. And a lot of those people, if you ask them, they will tell you that they were also one of those people that that was scared of public speaking. I am one of those people. For sure, before the age of probably 25, I did not enjoy getting in front of people and speaking, but I learned to. I taught myself to. I got out there, I did it. I didn't believe that that's who I was. I didn't say to myself that this is who I am and I'm not able to do it. And it scares me so much that I'm not going to try. That's one example of how people's perception of themselves does not effectively work with reality. The reality is that you're the only one holding yourself back from being a good public speaker because you believe that it's so scary that you don't take the time to actually build the skills to do it. You don't have the confidence in yourself to stand in front of people. Maybe you don't have the knowledge base to be able to do it. Maybe you don't have, you think you have to be this smart, articulate person. You look at a public speaker and you're like, oh, I don't have the knowledge that they have. So you have all these ideas of what a good public speaker is. You look at yourself compared to that and you're like, I don't have any of those things. And you just convince yourself that you're not able to do it. And we do that in so many levels of life. Here's this goal, here's the kind of person that it takes. I don't check any of those boxes, so why should I even try? And it's that loop over and over and over again. So that's a lot of what we struggle with when it comes to our personal development. When it comes to our personal development, a lot of it is just revolved around a- improving our perception of ourselves in the world, of who we are, what we're capable of. Yeah, we have to have a better understanding of what reality actually is, our knowledge of how the world works. That's another thing that we need to improve. Our knowledge of how the world works, how things work around us, which partly is goes back to ourself and our inability to have the knowledge or our belief that we don't have the knowledge. Investing is a perfect example of this because so many people say that investing either in the stock market or in real estate is super risky. But really, I mean, is it risky? Eh, you know, just depends on what stock you're talking about. It depends on what level of real estate you're talking about. But it's risky to most people because they don't understand it, not because it's risky. It's risky to most people because they try something once or their friend tried something once and they failed and they told them about it and that led the person to believe that it's risky. Oh, it's risky because my friend Johnny over there, he tried to flip one house and he fell on his face. Well, you have no clue how Johnny actually went about doing that. Did he check his numbers beforehand? Because in real estate, the deal happens when you buy, not when you sell. You make your money when you buy, not when you sell. That's one of the premises that you need to understand when it comes to real estate. And most people don't take the time to understand that. So we also need to understand how the world works. We need to have a knowledge of how the world works. And we have a hard time interacting with reality because of that, because we get these like glimpses of how it works, but most of it comes from just news we get and conversations with people, which is very unreliable. Not all the time, but especially today, since anybody, like everyone has a microphone to talk to, not literally what I'm talking to, but a microphone in social media. Everyone has a microphone to talk through. So you get all of this information and you get all of these opinions and all of these ideas. How in the world do you even know which ones are worth paying attention to? So you have to be able to start to learn to think for yourself so that you can have a better understanding of how the world actually works, of what reality actually looks like. So that's some of the things that people struggle with. Most of it is really just our beliefs about who we are, our beliefs about what we're capable of, our beliefs about what it takes to do certain things, and then the knowledge of how certain things work. And if you start to just maneuver some of those things around, that alone can have a huge impact on your outcomes in the world because you're developing yourself, your mind, your body, and your spirit as you change yourself, your belief about you. You're developing your mind, body, and spirit as you understand the world more and how the world works. And as you do that, you slowly start to change your behavior, slowly start to not react, you slowly start to respond differently to the world whenever things start to happen, and you start to see different outcomes happen. So the three habits we're going to talk about today are the three most effective that we can implement to be able to overcome those struggles, to build up ourself, to build up our belief about ourselves, who we are, what we believe we're capable of, to start to understand the world better so that we know how it works. And we don't need to know, we can't know how everything works. We can't know how everything works. But if you can start to just make your mind think differently, make your mind pay attention differently, or pay attention at all for that matter, then you can start to have a different perspective on things. You can start to respond to the world differently. And that's what we're after. Okay. Three most effective habits that you can do for your personal development so that we can overcome those kinds of struggles in our lives. Okay. Let's take a look. I'm going to take another drink. Excuse me. Okay. Three most effective habits that we can put into our lives for our personal development. Habit number one. Habit number one is resistance training. Surprise, surprise, the meathead says that you should resistance train, and that is your number one habit that you can have for your personal development. This one may be a big surprise to many people because, you expect, I don't know, some enlightened answer or some sort of foo-foo answer. But here's why resistance training is the most effective thing you can do. And why by resistance training, I don't only mean being in the weight room. You can't, the weight room, of course, is a great place to be. I'm there regularly. I've been in the weight room since I was 13 years old. That's 26 years. But you can also do strongman competitions, not competitions, but strongman type training, powerlifting type training. Resistance training is using any kind of resistance outside of the body. Could also be the body, but at a certain point, your body is, you're going to become strong enough to be able to easily move your body around. I highly recommend you do calisthenics, very effective type of training. But when I say resistance, I mean external resistance training, things outside of you pushing against you. And here's why resistance training is the most effective habit that you can implement into your life for your personal development. When we talk about developing the mind, body, and spirit to overcome the rigors of life, resistance training knocks all of them out. The body is an obvious one because you're working on the body. You go in, you start lifting weights, you do it at least 3 days a week. 6 weeks later, you'll already start to see changes. 6 months later, your body will be significantly different. 6 years later, you'll be a different person. So the body is an obvious answer. You build a strong body, you build a resilient body, you build a mobile body if you do it correctly. There's just so many levels of it within your body that you're building. I think that's an obvious answer. So I want to talk about the mind. The mind will develop very effectively in the weight room because the weights don't lie. The weights will very quickly tell you how to respond to the world. You'll figure out very quickly how the world works when you go in the weight room. Because as soon as you start to pick up weights and move them around, you'll go, okay, I know that that's heavy, and I know that I can do this. I know that I can't do that, but I know that I can do this one. You very quickly figure out how the world works. And that starts to build an understanding of how the world works, which is one of the things we want to work on. But also, as you start to get stronger, it builds self confidence, self esteem, because you start with 20 pounds and you can do that 10 times. And then you move to 25 pounds and then you can do that 10 times. And then you move to 30 pounds and you can do that 10 times. And you start to progress. And your mind starts to go, oh, I can get better at things. I'm getting better. I'm getting stronger. I'm improving. So you're building your self-confidence, you're building your self-esteem, and then you also start to build more self-respect, more respect for yourself because you're you're following through with what you say you're going to do. I'm going in the weight room, I'm building myself into a different person. Therefore, I respect myself for doing what I say I'm going to do and building myself into a different person. You also build the attributes that everyone talks about that you need, which is important. Things like willpower and discipline. Whenever you follow through and you do those things, you go to the weight room regularly, you're building discipline into yourself. You're building willpower into yourself. You're building all of these attributes, which are part of your mind and your spirit for that matter. You're building all of these attributes. So when you put resistance training into your life, you have all of these things that you start to build. It's not just about going in there and looking better naked. It's about going in there and building a a body, yes, but also a mind and a spirit that is resilient to the obstacles that you will confront outside of the weight room. Because when you can overcome obstacles in the weight room, that will translate to being able to overcome obstacles outside of the weight room. When you can be patient with yourself as you progress weights, as you get stronger, as you slowly just get one more rep of a weight, and then one more rep a month later, and then a month later, one more rep again. When you can be patient with yourself in that process, that will translate into the real world. And that's why resistance training is one of the most, if not the most effective thing you can do for your personal development because it just rounds you out. It covers so many bases, but you have to do it right. You have to do it right. And there's a couple things you have to do it right. Yes, there is a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And by right, I don't mean you have to follow these sets and you have to follow these reps and this, that, and the other thing. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the effort that you're putting into it. Because you can go in the weight room and tinker around and screw around and not get any results and tell yourself it's a waste of time and be like, oh, well, that Jerry's full of shit. He didn't know what in the world he's talking about. That can happen. You go in, you sit down on a machine, you do a set, you sit on your phone, you screw around on your phone, you do another set. And, 45 minutes later, you've done like 6 sets of 2 exercises because you just screwed on your phone all the time. That's not effective. That's not the quote right way to do it. That is ineffective, not useful way to do it. You will not build any level of self-confidence, self-esteem, belief, body, any of it doing things like that. That's why the effective way to do it is go in with a plan, know what you're going to do, and go in and do it. Don't have your phone with you unless your plan is on your phone, but you have to be able to be disciplined enough to not fall into the trap of everything else on your phone because that that thing has I've seen it kill so many people's progress because they waste so much damn time on their phone while they're working out. You want to complain about not being able to work out, but then when you go work out, you're just sitting on your phone the whole time, not getting any results. If your plan's on your phone, that's the only thing you look at. while you're using it. Otherwise, don't have your phone with you. Write your plan down. I use an analog, pen and paper to be able to track my workout. Write your workout down, and you can translate it. You can put it into your phone after your workout. So go in, make a plan before you go in, do the plan, and be done. And that's that. Put effort into it. At least one of your sets should be close to failure, if not to failure. At least one of your sets for every exercise should be close to failure, if not to failure. And you should try and have at least, I would say, one PR in every workout. And a PR means personal record. PR can be a record in reps, or it can be a record in weight. So if you're doing 25 pounds for an exercise and you usually only do 10 and you happen to do 11, great, you hit a PR. And if you just followed those basic rules, go in, make a plan before you go in, do the plan, put in effort at every set, and for at least one exercise, hit a PR, then you'll get the benefits that we're talking about. But you have to go in with purpose. You can't go into your workout just like, let's see what machines do I want to do today? No, you have to go in with purpose. You have to go in with a plan, knowing what you're going to do. You can tinker with it. You can change it while you're working out if you feel like suddenly doing a different exercise. Cool, fine. But go in with a plan and do it and get it done. Okay? I could talk about this forever, but weight training, resistance training, the most effective thing that you can do for your personal development, because it just covers so many grounds. Okay, that's number one. Number two. Number two is personal education. Personal education, not education, but personal education. What I mean by that is you educating yourself about things. The education that we get in college and in high school, not that all of it is useless, but we're taught things, and a lot of those things aren't translated into the real world, or we're not taught how to effectively translate them into the real world. And I would say most importantly, we're not taught how to think for ourselves and then how to educate ourselves once we actually get out into the real world. How to build new skills, how to build new abilities, how to think critically, how to think for ourselves, how to think through a problem, how to overcome an obstacle whenever we're confronted with an obstacle. That's what I mean by personal education. Now, I would have just put reading here, but I understand that not everybody wants to read. If you had a bad relationship with reading in high school or in college for that matter, because you felt like I had to read a bunch of books that I didn't really care about. I, again, was one of those people, and I didn't read a book once I got out of college. Even in college, I probably didn't read many books. I probably read a total of 3 through high school. Cliff Notes was very helpful through high school and college. At any rate, I didn't read another book till I was maybe, I don't know, 25, 26, 27, something along those lines. But when I read my first book, and I remember the book that I read, it was called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, I believe is the author's name. Great book if you're an entrepreneur. I highly suggest that you read it. If you're not an entrepreneur, I suggest you read it because it helps you understand systems, which a lot of life is just systems, and that's how you can become effective. Nonetheless, when I read that book in like an hour or two. It's not a very big book anyway. It's maybe a couple hundred pages, but I grabbed it and I started reading it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my mind just like caught everything and I just flew through the book." But after I read that book, I realized that I could find books that I enjoyed reading and that built skills, that made me into a different person, that helped me find solutions to the problems that I was being confronted with, that helped me be able to communicate better, that helped me want to be able to become a public speaker. Because if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and it was right around the age of 25 or so that I started to develop the idea of, opening my business. I think I was 28 or 29 when I opened the gym. I knew I needed to develop some skills, lots of skills for that matter. So I started reading and I started developing skills and I started practicing. I started doing those things. And that's what personal education is all about. It's about developing the skills that are necessary to be able to overcome the obstacles that you're confronted with and to be able to build just your internal belief about yourself and who you are along the way as well. Because that's something that we will always be building. We will always need to build our belief about ourselves, who we are, what we're capable of, our strengths, and all of that. Those are the things that we will always be building. And personal education can do that. Personal education can be through reading. Again, if you haven't read lately and you have this, block about reading, I strongly encourage you to set that block aside for some period of time. Here's a couple of things that you can try. If you're like, I just don't like sitting and reading a book, it's just something I can't do. First, understand that it's because you spend so much time on your phone and your ability to pay attention to a book is directly related to how you interact with your phone. Your mind literally is adapted to doing things quickly, to getting little snippets of information and scrolling through information so that when you sit and read a book, it's different. You have to sit and focus on the book. That's why you struggle with it. It's not because the book is boring. It's not because you're a person that can't read. It's because you're used to interacting with the phone and not a book. Okay? So, if you're going to try to read, number one, I would tell you don't read on a phone or on any device for that matter. Read a book. Get a paper book. Get a book and read the book. If that's not for you, Audible is an option. Audiobooks are an option. There's Audible, there's Scribd. That's a good one. There's Blinkist, which doesn't have, I don't think, full books. They do book summaries. You know, I think Spotify has books now. They're everywhere. You can get books from audiobooks from just about anything. So, listening to a book is also a very real option. Another great and effective option, which I've just recently started trying, is reading and listening to a book at the same time. If you're wanting to get the most out of a book, read and listen to the book at the same time. And then you're getting two kinds of input in at the same time. You're reading, you're listening, you're able to pause when you need to and take notes and highlight and mark in the book if you need to, whatever particular topic you're trying to focus on. So that has been a game changer for me. I don't do that for all of my books, but for the ones I'm trying to really get, a lot of good information out of, I'll do that for those books. So, of course, books aren't the only option, but I would strongly suggest you put books into your life. That will cover your mind and your spirit to a significant degree. To a significant degree, because you start to change your perception. You start to, first of all, be able to reflect on yourself better. When you read books about self-confidence, self-esteem, and things like that, you start to reflect on yourself better. You start to not take it so harshly. People take it so harshly when they point at themselves. But all you're doing is helping yourself improve in some way. You're helping yourself be able to deal with reality more effectively when you do that. It's not about shaming yourself because you're a bad person because you have this attribute or you don't have this attribute. It's about being able to overcome it either through building it or by finding a strength that can work you through it. And when you read, that helps you be able to do that. It helps you be able to see those things more effectively. So that's why I'm really focusing hard on this reading thing. Again, if reading's not for you, YouTube is also an effective place where you can go and you can find good quality information if you search for good quality information. And YouTube is the best of the medias where you can find quality information. You know, I would not go to Facebook or Instagram or anything like that to educate yourself per se. Most of that is entertainment. YouTube, a lot of it is entertainment as well, but you can find really good quality information. You can follow good quality people, and they'll have long form videos that you can go and learn about, again, yourself more, about ideas more, about reality and how reality works and how to work through reality and how to become more conscious about, things in life. So YouTube is another good place that you can go and you can find those things. Courses are also another good thing. If you find somebody that you enjoy and you think that their information is valid, there's a good chance that they sell a course or they have a membership site of some sort where you can go and you can learn and you can listen and you can take notes and you can find and you can potentially connect with other like-minded people. So that's what personal education is about. It's about building yourself into a person. It's about building your mind and your spirit specifically into a person. It's about helping yourself increase your belief about who you are, what you're capable of, how you can interact with the world, and definitely understanding how the world works. Like reading is one of the most effective ways to understand how the world works. How the world works. Okay? That's personal education. This is something I so strongly recommend that you start to do. Figure out how to get reading back into your life, and I promise you, it will change your life. It will change your life. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, keep grabbing water. Long explanations here. Okay, number three. So there's a saying that knowledge is power. So if we cover our second base and we start reading and we start educating ourselves, that's good. Knowledge is not power, though. Knowledge is only potential power. Knowledge does not become power until you put it into action. So, number three, the third habit that you can have for your personal development is to battle test your ideas, to battle test the things that you're learning, to battle test them. And by battle test, I simply mean put them into practice, put them into the world, put them out to the world to to see what kind of feedback you get back. This is another thing that scares people so much is number one, change. We are creatures of habit. So once we get into the routine and once we get into a habit of things, even if we learn something new, we have a hard time changing it because we're not certain about how the outcome's going to be. And we're very comfortable with the way things are. Even if we're not happy with it, we're comfortable with it and we're not certain about how it's going to be if we change it. So you have to learn to battle test your ideas. You have to learn to, and I say battle test on purpose because all you're doing is constantly testing things. You're just constantly testing new strategies, new tactics, and new ideas, is what you're doing. And by constantly, I don't mean every day or every hour or even every week for that matter. But if you take resistance training as an example, and you're going to battle test resistance training, you go, okay, well, first I'm going to try the weight room. I was there before, but I haven't been in there in a long time, and I think I can get there 3 days a week. I tried 5 before, and that was overwhelming. So I'm going to try 3 days a week. And you go in and you battle test weight training 3 days a week, 60 minutes at a time. And you're like, okay, you do that for 6 weeks. You're like, cool, oh, that worked out well. So let me try another day. Let me see what happens if I do 4 days. So you battle test 4 days a week of weight training, 60 minutes at a time. You do that for 6 weeks and you're like, oh, that felt like a little too much. I felt overwhelmed with the rest of my schedule. I felt like my body wasn't able to recover as well, whatever happened. So then you go back to 3 days a week. Bam, you tested it. You tested it and you figured out that what works is 3 days a week at 60 minutes at a time. That's what works for you. Perfect. That's the point, is to be able to figure out what works. And the only way you do that is if you test things, is if you test them and figure out. Now, again, you might try 6 months down the road, once you've weight trained 3 days a week, you might go, oh, okay, let me try again. Let me see now if I do 4 days a week. Let me see how it feels. And then you might figure out that 4 days a week works great. Great. My body's changing again all of a sudden. I feel different. My energy is better. It wasn't as, Stress inducing this time? Perfect. 4 days a week. I'm going to stick with this. So you change things. It's okay. Like people think that you have to be perfect with the plan right off the bat. That is so unrealistic. And if you look at anybody who's successful in anything, none of them have done the same thing forever. None of them. Not one. They've maybe stuck with the same idea, meaning me, I've stuck with weight training for a long time. I've done other things like yoga and, you know, uh, not much outside of that. I'm kidding. I've done other things, but weight training has been the premise, but I've changed how I've weight trained. Sometimes it's been single body splits. Sometimes it's been upper lower body splits. Sometimes it's full body splits where I'm doing full body every day. Sometimes it's 3 days a week. Sometimes it's 5 days a week. Sometimes it's 6 days a week. Sometimes it's 60 minutes. Sometimes it's 90 minutes. Sometimes I'm doing sets of 10. Sometimes I'm doing sets of 5. You see what I mean? That's what I mean by changing things. That's what I mean by testing things. And you have to do the same when it comes to things like your interaction with the world. For instance, if you're having trouble communicating with your spouse about about, you want something done a certain way, what do most of us do? I said to do it this way. That's not effective. It happens, it's effective 0% of the time. They do it then, but a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. The next time, that person's going to go back to the same thing. So, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? If you want to be effective, figure out a better way to communicate. Instead of yelling and screaming like a freaking banshee, go, "Uh, you know, I, I'm curious, do you do this way for any reason? Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that that's the effective way? Oh, well, that's interesting. And what you might find is they actually have a reason why they do things the way they do them. Goodness forbid that they actually have a different idea than you have. Goodness forbid. Or they may not have a reason. And it's just like, well, that's just the way I do it. Okay, well, I like it this way because of XYZ. I'm curious if you could try doing it this way for a while. That's just it's just a weird thing that I have. I'm just curious if you could try doing it that way for a little bit, if it's not too inconvenient. Oh, cool. Creed can't. Oh, great. Perfect. Now, there's a good chance you'll have to remind them because all humans are fallible, yourself included. Good chance you have to remind them. But that's battle testing an idea. Instead of communicating the same way, if you're having to repeat things over and over again, your communication sucks. I'll put it that way. It, Not that you're not going to have to repeat things, but if you have to repeat them just repetitively, it's because the way you're doing it is not effective. So you have to change it. You have to test something different. You have to try a new path. You have to ask a question differently. Understand first, and then you can go into explaining instead of just like diving into it. Okay, that's another battle testing idea. And I can go on down the list with your career, how you deal with your career, how you deal with your boss, how you change your nutrition. That's another thing that you can battle test. So many people are like, "Oh, what's the perfect diet?" There is no perfect diet. "Oh, well, what should I eat? What's the most effective thing I can do for losing belly fat?" "Well, you can eat whole foods." "Well, I already know that." "Well, are you doing it?" "No." "Okay. Well, why aren't you doing it?" So, nutrition is another perfect example of that, of just testing things, of understanding that, you get to a point where you're doing most of it, but then you test and you see, well, what if I tried low carb for 6 weeks? Well, that didn't work out well because my energy kind of sucked. But I feel a little leaner, so that's okay. Am I willing to deal with lower energy to get leaner? Yeah, I'm willing to deal with it. It's testing the idea. So again, I could beat this idea, this idea to death, but I'm not going to. So you have to be able to put things out there and to see if they're going to work. You have to do them for at least some period of time. Some things you got to do them longer, some things you can do them a little shorter. But if you're doing the same thing over and over again and it's not effective, that's called insanity. Same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You got to be able to change things. You got to be able to test things. That's where personal education comes in because That'll teach you what to test. But you can't just learn about it and go, "Oh, that's a good idea." You got to take it and then put it into action. You got to test it. You got to put it out into the world to see if it's going to work. Okay? That's it. That's our three most effective habits that you can do. Number one, resistance training. Number two, personal education. Number three, battle testing your ideas. Now, like I said, there are some things that are obviously missing. And I'll talk about those after I get another drink. So, excuse me, there are some things that are obviously missing that, other influencers or, people of wisdom, your aunt, other people that you follow that would say, no, this is what you need to do. First of all, I'll tell you, I'm not telling you I'm the smartest person in the world. I'm not telling you that you need to follow exactly what I'm saying. I'm telling you through my experience as a human being and my experience in working with thousands of people through owning a facility for 10 years and being in, health and fitness and personal training for over 15 years. So I'm telling you through my own experience of working with people hands on, that's important. A lot of the people that you get information from are just people who have ideas and then they just talk about the ideas. They read something in a book, which is great, but they didn't battle test it. They just say, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to go tell everybody about it. How do you know it's effective if you don't know, if you haven't used it on anybody? So I'm telling you through my experience, again, anecdotally, from myself, and the thousands of people I've worked with over the last 15 plus years. Also, where was I going with that? Also, my brain, my brain just like clicked in another direction. But like I said, I'm not telling you that these are the three things that you need to be doing. And if you're not, I'm not being that person. This is my opinion. These are not facts. What works for one person does not work for another. But also, these mostly aren't the things that most people would list. So hopefully it made you think about them. It made you go, oh, well, that's interesting. I was expecting a different list. I was expecting something different. And hopefully that makes you think. Because again, through personal education, it should make you think differently. You shouldn't constantly be feeding yourself a bunch of nonsense, not nonsense, but a bunch of stuff that you only agree with or that you only, you know, resonate with. You should be listening to, reading, watching things that push against what you already know. Okay, so here's a couple of things that are missing. Nutrition is one. Nutrition is one of the things that is obviously missing from this list. And if we were answering the question on if you wanted to lose weight most effectively, three most effective strategies to lose weight, nutrition would be in there, most definitely, because you can't out train a bad diet, as the saying goes. So, nutrition doesn't as effectively build the mind, body, and spirit as weight training, personal education, and then battle testing your ideas. It may be in the top five, but it's not in the top three. Yeah, it feeds your body, most definitely, because if you're eating sugary junk, then your body's going to react differently and you're not going to be able to potentially think more clearly. However, when you weight train, your body processes food differently. That's what people don't see. That's what people don't say. When you weight train, you build muscles, you teach your muscles, retrain your muscles to deal with glucose differently, and you build more muscle to be able to store more glucose, which is carbohydrates broken down. Then your body uses those nutrients differently. I'm not justifying that you can keep eating junk and weight train. However, when you weight train, your body uses nutrients differently. But when you just change your nutrition, you're not changing the composition of your muscles per se. You to some degree, but not significantly. Excuse me. So that's nutrition is one obvious thing that's missing. Morning routines is another thing that's missing. Morning routines have just been beaten to death over the last 5 years or so, just beaten to death, and they're useful. I have a morning routine. I have do the same thing every morning. Every morning, do the same thing. Get up within a half an hour of around the same time, either 5 or 5:30 every morning. Then I do the same thing every morning. So yes, morning routine very effective. Is it the top three most effective things that you can do to build your mind, body, and spirit? No, no, I don't think so because, it may be a good time for you to read, and that's when I read, but that's not when maybe a lot of people can read. Maybe they have to read at lunch. Maybe they have to read at night before they go to bed. So, while the morning routine is very effective, definitely something that everybody should have, I don't know that it's one of the top three things that you should do in order to build, you know, having a morning routine is not getting you into action on anything. It's starting your day off right, which is good. So hopefully it allows your rest of your day to get into action, but it's not getting you into action. Like weight training is getting you out and doing something. Personal education, not necessarily getting you into action, but if you follow the third battle test ideas, then you're getting into action. So again, morning routine is very effective. I just don't think it's one of the top three. And then of course, there's all the other like saunas and ice plunges and things like that, all of which again are great. Very effective longevity tools and health span tools, all of those things, all very effective, all very useful, but not even close to the top three things that you should be doing for your personal development. So, you should do those things, but this is a different way to think about things. This is something that you can take these three ideas, and if you're not doing them, you can test them to see if they work for you. Instead of me just giving you the same thing over and over and over and over again. Here's the same, do your morning routine, eat well, ice bath in the morning. So, you know, it's I'm not mocking because I think it's a dumb idea, but you know, these are different ideas. Take them, use them, put them into practice, do something with your life, try something different, push yourself to think differently. That's the point. That's the point. Weight training, education, yourself, educate yourself, and then test your ideas. Do those things and see how your life changes. Okay, that's what I got for you today. Remember to rate and review the podcast. And until next time, get out there, step into growth.